Hello, everyone. How's it going? Yeah, welcome. Welcome to our webinar with the Immersive Learning Research Network. Hi, Robin and team.
Hey, Jonathan.
3 XR. Welcome. This is fantastic. Really excited about what's happening today. We've got a workshop, so we're really going to get a great tour of 3 pound games and their 3 pound XR, their GroKit Core group or their GroKit Core interface. And we're really excited about deploying this spatial computing. Robin Moulder is the CEO of 3 Pound Games. She's an entrepreneur, producer, and musician, innovating at the cutting edge of XR development and storytelling. And she's a recognized authority in the realm of spatial computing and has dedicated her career to pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the immersive computing landscape. And to show us how it's done and invite us into using these incredible tools, Robin has brought her team. So I'll let them introduce themselves, but really excited. Thank you so much, Robin and team, for joining iLearn's webinar.
Thanks for having us. Let me give you a quick background on us, and then I will introduce the team. Chris, you want to take us to the next slide?
Uh, sh that's not the next slide for this one. So we'll just go in a little bit of
Oh,
it was
oh,
the
oh,
workshop checklist, but
I see. All right.
but we
This
can
is
do this
pretty.
instead.
Let's
There you
go with
go.
the pretty pictures first. So yeah, we started off like 2008, doing mobile development, and somewhere along the line, yeah, I've always wanted to kind of get into, deeper 3D immersive stuff, but it just wasn't ready for prime time. And then one day I met Chris Casaldi, and he
Hmm.
brought a HTC Vive over to my house, and I was like, whoa, this is the future. Like, this is it. Like, being immersed 100%, being able to like understand everything from an education standpoint, from a like just making us all be superhumans. This is the way to go. But we knew back then it wasn't quite ready for prime time because, it was like what, 12, 13 little boxes to open up and stuff to draw on your walls and all kinds of crazy
Oh, it's
stuff.
terrible.
Was not
Yeah.
ready yet, but we knew that the quest was right around the corner. And, so we sort of started working on like core systems and libraries. How can we build fast? How can we be a small team and do lots of amazing stuff? And we started off with the movement system for the Unity in the Unity Asset Store, and it was a whole lot of different kinds of movements of how you could just like not teleport, anything but teleport, honestly, but teleport was in there too. So flight was a big one that we were very hooked on, and that led to Space Dragon, led to Vault of Stars, and really leveraging this immersive medium to try out different ways to interact in a space and do different things, travel to different worlds, and tell different stories in deep, immersive telling story ways. And all of this led to us learning how to build more efficiently and finding ways to not spend our time rewriting the same code over and over and over again. Chris doesn't like that, and neither should you. So we click to the 3 pound XR side. So we also leveraged all of this background in gaming to help clients out, partners out. In this case, this is a partnership opportunity where we own these medical apps and we can sell these medical apps, and it was a partnership with Tucson. So this built out our accelerator model of how we can partner with people and get them on the path to spatial computing. And that's awesome. But you know what? It doesn't scale. So we can only work with a few clients at a time. We can't scale and do that many of them. So we decided that we would offer up the tools that we use to the mass public to really light the fire on spatial computing. Like, let's get this going. Let's help get your ideas out there, and you can get your proof of concept going. You can just start. It's a lot like language learning. You think you're like, oh, I'm going to go learn Spanish. And then you go learn 20 or 30 words, and then you can't string a sentence together. That's what I see in spatial computing. You can kind of do some stuff in Unity pretty quickly, but you can't do something particularly useful. And this is where we come in with this tool set. This is everything we've learned and all the like magical building blocks, all the stuff in between that you really need to know to get you to that next step where you actually have something that's functional and useful. And then you can go spend a ton of time making it all beautiful and pretty and super refined. But let's get that functionality down. So we've done a ton of different projects. There might be another slide with even more projects on it. There might not be. See if it's in here. Chris
Yeah,
is
there
like,
is. There's one more.
there we go. We've done a lot of projects. So
We have.
hospitality, medical, manufacturing, that's retail up there in the corner and with the slice of medical in there. Um, you could see how quickly we're just reiterating a lot of the same concepts and count puzzles and scanning and things that spawn stuff and all of these things are concepts that if you understand what those concepts are, then you'll have those object-oriented design components. So when you're thinking about breaking down your application into how am I going to build this thing, first break it down into what are those functional components that you're looking for. And then you'll see that we have all those functional components and you'll just be able to like pull them into your application, wire them up together, and you'll be all good. So Chris Costaldi is our technical director. He's here with us today. He's an expert in Unity application development, master designer, laziest coder I know. He does not want to write code.
Nope.
Never. If I wrote
Never.
it, I wrote it. He'll
Never must
fix
be written
it.
again. Yes.
He'll uplift it, but he's not going to write it again. Not going to happen. So you should have that attitude too, because why are we reinventing the wheel over and over and over again? We also have Bryce with us. He is um, a like he manages projects. He's a Unity developer as well. He's kind of a well-rounded. I don't really know. I never know how to describe Bryce because he knows how to do lots of stuff in the stack. And when we say the word implementer, it sounds weird because it doesn't sound like it sounds like you just put the cake together. But there's more to it than that. When you implement in Unity, there's knowing how the stuff is wired together, understanding the design of it. Like, he also designs applications as well. So he is kind of you in a lot of ways, you, the audience, of someone who knows where they want to go with a thing. They have the skills in Unity to get where they want to go, and they could really use some help on that. Like, just go give me the dev stuff that's already done. So, Brace is your mirror in a lot of ways, and he will be here to help you. He's on Discord as well. So, anybody has any trouble with that, they'll be able to contact Chris or Bryce. We're available as much as we can be. So let's get started. Chris, go ahead and take it away with a quick overview.
Yes, the first thing we want to talk about is your checklist for the workshop. We have two checklists to go through. Your first is your pre-workshop checklist, which you do way before. Definitely should go sign up for GroKit Core if you haven't. Make sure you have 20 gigs free for VR assets. Update your graphics card. Make sure you have a blank project. In this case, it's going to be Unity. Make sure you have your MetaQuest charge and oh, come on, there it is. Your MetaQuest charge and ready to go. And I always put the last, even though I said charge it, always charge the headset because every time I pick it up, it doesn't have a charge for some reason. Now for this workshop, we're going to be using Unity 2023, 2022.3.x. So we don't care what the X number is. It'll be fine. Just 2023. You want to have the downloaded GroKit Core project version imported into that project and make sure you have MetaLink active and your headset charged. If you are using a Mac or something not capable of Link, you could just ignore all the times we do MetaLink testing. We do have a lot of editor tools that allow you to check that way, but you won't be able to test as easily, which is a problem. But we'll get to that
But
too.
you can still do it. You can still
You
do it. You
can still do it.
code
We know tons of
on
people who
on
do
your
it that
Mac.
way.
It just takes you a little longer because you can't just do what he's going to do, which is like, ooh, did it work? Yes, it worked.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's inconvenient. You have to make a build.
So let's talk briefly about GroKit Core. So GroKit Core is a Unity platform for making spatial computing, applications, game, business solutions. We specifically are a low-code implementation, but you can do low-code, but you can build applications using no code whatsoever. We call it low-code specifically because if you do need to code something or change something, everything's open source. For the developers out there, there's public, virtual, you can change anything that you want to work a specific way that you need to. So if you want to do something specific, you can rewrite the code, but you do not have to get most of the. In this example, we're not going to be writing a single line of code. We're going to use everything with the existing GroKit Core components that we have. Speaking of GroKit Core and features, we have our code in our Grow blocks. Our Grow blocks are pre-built blocks that you can just plop in. We have a bunch of integrations for AI. We also have AI assisted creation, which I'll start talking about in a little bit when I go over the interface and how to download GroKit Core and get started. And then as for the big features of GroKit Core is we use a bunch of custom inspectors we have buttons, which we'll go into. We have headers and drawers and all sorts of things, notes. So
This is
we're
years. This is
yes,
years
years exactly.
of us internally going, oh my God, Chris, can you just add a button that does this thing? Or can you
Yes,
just this or just that? That makes our lives easier when we're just trying to get things done quicker.
it
And
does.
it's led to an entire methodology around our production pipeline process. And that's a big value add to this as well, is if you have a bunch of people using GroKit Core and are on this, path, then you'll be able to do what I do, which is I travel around the country all the time and I still work in these projects. How in the world can I do that? It's because I just know how it all works because we have a methodology, we have a plan. So I could just drop in any project, I can go and do my audio and I'm out. It's like, I'm
Yeah.
done. Easy.
We are specifically focused in for Unity events, which makes it nice and easy to add and drop things and to switch things out, or as Robin has mentioned, to just slide her audio right into the projects, which is great. And then we support mixed reality and hand tracking. We have drag and drop prefabs. You're going to see like from importing to getting hand tracking, it's almost instantaneous. If you subtract the importing process, which we can't make any faster. Wish we could. Next on our list is to talk about activators. And as Ron was talking about our methodology that we use is the idea of activators. So these are conceptual concepts of on and off. And we have two types, and they're very similar to each other. One is called an inward activator. And an inward activator is basically you put on the top of an object, and then everything that object's supposed to do, you add to those event there. So everything has an on and an off. So you think like a particle door, door may open, you may want to open, play a sound effect, and play a particle, and play another sound, who knows what else. All that can be added there, and then you can copy and paste that, and it's really easy to test too because we have an on event button. Off event, same thing. That could be the door open. When the door closes, it does the same thing. On and off is supposed to be like a conceptual concept. And then we have those are the inward activators. You're going to use more of those. The outward activators are the idea that they go reach out and touch. So for example, a light switch would have an outward activator, which would then run an inward activator. It would run a light turning on. If we go back to the
On the
door
other
example,
thing.
yeah, the other thing. So go back to the door example, rather than, walking up to your door, let's say you have a button. So if I hold the button, the door opens. If I release it, it goes off. And the advantage of outward activators is that they're linked. So you can run one inward activator or you can run hundreds of them. So if you
Yeah.
have a
So you
light
might press
switch and you
that
want,
button. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. You might press that button and it's like, sure, the door opens, but what else might happen?
yeah,
Oh, the
what else
music
might happen?
swells up and like all the lights go on in the whole room. And suddenly you realize where you actually are as a dungeon underwater,
Yeah.
looking up and there's a giant wheel.
So that's the idea of inwards is that you can have usually have one outward activator and it could run so many inward activators. So, go into a room, as you were saying, lights turn on, door plays sound, something activates, underwater bubbles appear. That could all be handled by activators. We'll be talking about them today in our demo to make the dragons. We also have a bunch of common components. We're going to use some of these, but there is a lot. We specifically have triggers and item ID, and item ID is an extension of, it's a way to detect if this object should be used. So rather than using, if you're familiar, Unity tags, you could use these item IDs, and we have a preset, and you can put an actual string to it. So it's really easy to go between objects, and then you also don't have to worry if an object doesn't have an item ID, it won't use specific things that use an item ID. It's a really simple concept, which we'll go over. And then our favorite thing is we've already talked about buttons, but we have a lot of debug tools. As we know, because we've been developing this forever, if I have to stop and put the headset on, I have lost 20 seconds, which doesn't seem like much, but don't forget Unity has to enter play mode, Unity exit play mode. It adds up to about a minute and a half to test every single thing.
And
And
that's only if you're
use,
testing for a quick thing too. Like,
yeah,
because
exactly.
when it's me, I'm like, all right, I gotta go fly over to this area. I gotta press the
Yeah,
button. Like,
exactly.
oh my God, I forgot to connect some silly thing. And yeah, now for me, it's like 10 or 15 minutes lost if I
Hmm.
can't just see that the thing worked quickly.
And specifically, that's why we have specific debug tools to fly yourself over to places, to move where you have to go, to make sure something's color changed, shortcut windows that'll teleport the player. I'm going to be using the XR debug rig mover, which we call, I use it all the time. If you've ever done in VR before, you're at your desk, you're like, the button is just too far, so you could just move yourself forward and spin yourself around. I'll be showing that off. We also have a lot of timers and sequencers. You'd be surprised how many things are time-based to like start an event, have something happen in a specific time, even make a rapid fire shooting game. All sorts of things use timers. Sequencers will do things in a specific order or out of order. So if you're doing a tutorial for tutorial or you're doing a business application, you might want to go and build a sequence. One thing happens right after the other. And then we have our affectionate things. We call them do things. Do things are a collection of scripts that, well, do things. And what things they do is what the script is specifically. So one of the two most used that we use is called following and fake parent. Here you can see follow target and fake parent. And follow target will basically follow target, and you can give it specific things. You don't have to recode following, adjusting, time. You can play with the settings all day long. And fake parent is basically does parenting without actually parenting. So it'll act like it's actually parented. Same thing with moving, rotating, tweening, all sorts of components for that. We have one for rotational movement, one for movement. We have ones for destroying, ones for animating. And then in addition, we also have a pooled Unity Auto Manager. And we have two versions of this. We have our quick version, which is for the inefficient, I need to get something done very quickly. And then we have our pooled edition, which is much more advanced and has a lot of power for building loop sources and fading things in and out, getting your mixers, getting your audio just right for your application to make it all that much better. And if you want to talk about audio, Robin will talk for hours about audio. So
I'm here for you if you want to talk.
exactly. And then speaking of XR features, we haven't gone to that. So just keep that in mind. All these tools we talked about technically are not really XR features. They are important for building your application, but we also specifically have specified XR features. And we have hand trusting and gesture input. So any of you who's used Meta before, they have a rig. It's great. Hand tracks, so everything's wonderful, but you can't really detect input. So we have already taken care of that. We have a specific way we do hand tracking. That's in our documentation, but we have a great grab gesture that's combined, so everyone will be able to grab it right away. You can play that in our GroKit game, which no one's ever had a problem grabbing something with that game. It's an easy combination of both a pinch and a fist and ignoring where people's thumbs are. Because one of the big problems with hand gestures in general is that if I tell someone to make a gesture, they're all going to make it a little bit differently, and everyone's hands are a little bit different sizes. Um,
And
we
some
also don't
people don't
really,
have fingers at all. So,
yeah,
there's all
that's
there's
another
all
thing
kinds
too.
of accessibility issues that come into
There
play
is.
with hands.
Another problem is telling someone to memorize more than two hand gestures that are not like thumbs up, thumbs down, fist, open hand. And then the problem you say open hand, is this a correct open hand or is this the correct open hand? Then you have to be super specified. Sure, we're looking for. Same thing for point. Like that's a point. This is also a point. Which point do I want to do? A lot of
Oh
people
yeah,
can
we had a we had a
thumb it.
good 20-minute conversation about
Oh
that
yeah,
one day because I
it's
was
terrifying.
like, and we're Chris and I are both left-handed, so it's also interesting to note like left-handed people versus right-handed people tend to do things differently with different hands. Like,
Oh yes, that is a big thing too. But yeah.
so the beauty of all this is you can try out a scenario and with your users, and if it's not what you're looking for, you can change it
Change it
really
out.
quickly and just iterate until it feels really good.
Yeah, so we have about four I think it's five gestures. It's more than that. I gotta check. I think it's six or seven gestures. And then we have four custom gestures. And of course, you can add as many more as you want to our application because it's open source in a way that allows you to edit the code. If you need more customs, add more customs. Additionally, we're completely meta building block compatible. So we actually have a grow block that you just drop in. It's ready to use with any of the meta building blocks. So if you want to add pass through, if you want to add their co-location, you can just use our system and add whatever building blocks you want to add in. The last thing we have is if you aren't using Meta, if you're using another third party, the only thing you have to do to get our rig set up is you have to add the XR player controller, and you have to add 2 XR hands to where the left hand is and the right hand. You're good to go for whatever application you want. And lastly, we have a XR grab objects, and there is a bunch of ways to grab objects in VR. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. We built this one to be, I don't want to say, built this one to be, I don't want to say simplistic, but a little bare bones, if I would say, so that it can be added to very easily. It's only one component to add to an object. That's it. And your object is 100% grabbable with our system. It's only about 200 lines of code compared to some of the other systems where you have to add many components to get it to work.
Yeah, yeah, the simplicity in abstracting these things, and this is just, again, it's the years of experience of finding out like, ooh, it's not a good idea to add all these things together because it turns out this case we want this case we want this, in this case we want this.
Yeah, and
Separated those out.
different
Mhm.
people may want different ways of grabbing things depending upon your object. Like you may be in a time where you need absolute precision, and that grab system may not do what you want to do. There's other times when you just need things to float.
Yeah.
Why not make it simple? And then we have even more stuff. So we have separated things out to modules to make it easier to understand. We have bin systems, checklists, security, randomizers, a VFX module, UDUI modules, extension of the timeline. We have a nav mesh agent system that'll move them around, and score and text. And we're going to be using the score and text one for sure to talk about. There's a bunch of other weird things like our count puzzle, which we use quite a bit, which is basically every application in the world, especially games, are count puzzles. I do 3 things and something happens. I do 5 things and something happens. That's a count puzzle. And you'd be surprised how many games, when you really narrow them down to that, are just count puzzles inside of count puzzles. My favorite thing to say is Zelda. Zelda is a count puzzle to get to the greatest count puzzle of getting the 3 Triforce.
The ultimate count puzzle.
The ultimate count puzzle. Yeah. We also have a standalone AI module, and this is really useful because we have it set up that you don't have, all you need is to input your API keys, and you can do text-to-speech, vision, image generation, all those sorts of things. We also support Meta's WIT, so you can do TTS and STT, text-to-speech and speech-to-text, in their Meta support system. And what's nice about this is that it's designed in such a way that you don't have to use one system. So if you want to use OpenAI for speech recognition, and Gemini to do the data processing for the language model, and then you want to output in 11 labs, you can do that really easily by switching a component. Or let's say someone comes up with a cheaper rate or something, switching out those components, as long as they're compatible. You can't do, as long as they support that one, like text to speech. So for us, just drag and drop, move in, insert your API key.
Yeah, this is really powerful stuff because it goes back to that abstraction of the functionality of might have text to speech. I might have it like in all my areas of the code, and if I connected their system to all of that, and then I need to switch it because what if they got acquired? What if they went under? Whatever.
Who knows?
Then I have to switch this out, and I have to change all this. And
Yep.
what we've done here is like this is now GroKit Core connecting to all your code. And then there are things over here connecting the GroKit Core. So like no big deal. Oh, this drops out. We just replace this. Boop.
Yep. Nice and easy.
A lot easier.
Yeah, and with that, this is our contact information. We'll bring this up a bit after. But let's get into the tutorial for GroKit Core, and I'm going to take you through the process. We're just going to skip the loading. I already loaded the project behind, and we'll go step by step. All right. So let's start with after you've logged into GroKit Core. I got all my windows here. So 3 XR you can go to, and then sign up for the beta. Do this, you're going to get an email. It's going to come back, and then you're going to be able to log into this area right here. So this contains a bunch of things. It contains your API key. You have a link to our Discord to get information. You have a link to download GroKit Core, which I'll show you, and you have a link to our documentation. In addition, we also have our 2 AI agents that I have trained and beaten to do as they're told. Specifically one who's an
But
expert in
politely though,
GroKit
he's
Core.
always very polite to
Politely,
the
always
evil
polite to them.
overlords.
Always say please and thank you. It improves their thing. Why? No one knows, but it does. So yeah, you sign up for GroKit Core, you get 10 free chats specifically with this one. This one is trained on our entire code base and all of our documentation. So you can ask it to do things for specifically, hey, what does a specific component do? And then we also have our Unity expert, who is the one that this is my coding Unity expert that I use every single day to specifically trained on how we deal with GroKit Core stuff. And I also trained it on Unity NGO, the Unity networking for game objects. So it can do some network code, which is kind of nice. The GroKit Core AI bot is pretty good also at like, what do I need to start a project? You basically can sit down and ask it specifically and it will come up with some options. With that said, let's get into the documentation. So we have 2 immersive documentation. We have most of our documentation right now in Notion. And we are working on a beta documentation, which is going to contain a lot more information here. We have your welcome to Halo download install. Everything's here. You're all set. Videos to go and help you. We have every single component is documented in detail. Let's go look at the, there we go. We have a working search and everything. You've signed in up here and a link to our support Discord. We also specifically added the guide to this tutorial here in getting started under guided tutorials. And we are going to be making a Dragon Egg game today. So just to get started, we have a video here with one of our employees went through and did the entire tutorial with no audio, and then we have a guide to go through. So I'm going to be going through this step by step by step. It's going to be over here, so I know what I'm doing. As to downloading GroKit Core, once you're here, if you click the download GroKit Core button, you have a bunch of options to download GroKit Core. We have the one we recommend is the GroKit Core project, which you just download and everything is set up. It's set up to build, it's set up for Unity, it's set up for MetaLink. You can just download it and get started, and you don't have to worry about any did I install this correctly? Is that installed and all that sort of thing. We
And
also, if you want to
you
get,
could use that for anything beyond this
yeah,
demo. If it's
yes, of
it's a
course.
great shortcut. We're all about don't waste your time on stuff that we've all done a million times.
We also have a package if you want to add it to an existing project you already have, and we do have a Unity 6 version, though Meta and Unity 6 are still not friends yet. They should be soon, though, we hope. Okay. Yes, I do need to do that. Okay. Well, let's gotta do another restart. Okay. As for the documentation, all that, let's go through where did I put you? Dragon Egg. So let's talk about the application we're going to make. We are going to be making a really simple hand tracking application that's going to spawn a bunch of elemental eggs, and they have to go specifically in an elemental section. So we're going to be setting up the scene. We're going to be setting up a spawner. We're going to be setting up triggers. We're going to be creating the eggs. And we're then, if we have time, we're going to go into some polish, add some extra audio and particles to it. Now, the nice thing is I'm going to be going through GroKit Core systems as well to show you how we use buttons and additions and a lot of that sort of stuff as well, which is really nice. And that was fast. I'm happy. So this is my layout for Unity. One of the big things we have here is our GroKit Core helper. And this is just a bunch of easy to click buttons to go and use, and I'll be using them and calling them out as I use them. This is all documented. You just click the poor little help button and he'll tell you exactly how he works. It's wonderful. With videos and so on and so forth. So let's get started with our Dragon Egg application. So the first thing on our list is once I have my application all set up, I want to make sure I have Oculus Flip up and running. So let me make sure that's working. Yes. It's not. What a shock. Let's try another cable. All right, there we go.
So if you've never done
Okay,
this
perfect.
before, this is just the meta link part of it
Mhm.
to make sure that you're actually connected. Chris is using the cable. That I prefer the cable myself. You can use Airlink. It's just I don't know. It
Yeah.
just doesn't always work great for me. It's just one of those things.
One of the other tips I always say, let's see if we can get it here, is that you take a little piece of paper and you smash it right into that sensor right there so it doesn't fall asleep on you and lose link.
I prefer little tiny pieces of post-it note because you can
That's actually what it is in this case.
you always crumble and like smash it in there.
I mean, it's
I'm
a
a little
piece of
more
paper.
gentle about it.
It's a piece of paper. It's not going to scratch. If that piece of paper scratches the
Listen.
lens, we got things to talk about. Okay. So the first thing I always do is inside the GroKit, which we're going to go through and we're going to go into integrations meta, and we're going to make sure hand tracking is up and running. So we have two starter scenes, and these scenes are just basically test scenes, and you can also build off of them at the same time. We're going to be doing something from scratch, but let's get started. So all I can do is press play, and everything's going to work, right, computer? Yep. Gotta wait for Unity. But while we're waiting, this has the building block is ready. We have interact examples, and I'll show them. And there's 3 grab objects to go and play with right away. There we go. I had to think about it. So you can see, what do you do? Let me show you a link. Sorry about that.
This is great
Um,
stuff actually for people to
yeah,
see because if you're new to this, it can be very frustrating when you follow all the steps and then it doesn't work. And it has nothing to do with us or this or that. It's just like you're connecting a lot of stuff together, the meta
yeah.
link and all these, and it's just sometimes it just doesn't work. And sometimes you have to go yell at it, and sometimes you're like, oh, to allow this thing to use the USB. You're like, didn't I already answer that question 7 times?
So as you
But
see, I
that's
already have hand tracking up and running. Those are using, these things are just detecting movement. And one of the great keys, you can see the objects I need to do are down there. With the way the rig mover is set up, I can drive myself around the scene with WASD, whee, and move myself down and be like, there we go. Now I can grab things without punching my monitor. As you can see, everything's detected. I can pick up the object, move him around, and it also detects my hand. So this is just a great way to go and test everything. This is actually already set up to show you how input works. So you can do a middle pinch, red and green, double pinch, and come in. Oop, come in. See my hand. There's double pinch, and I even have a triple pinch. You see it turns yellow for a bit. So this is just a way to make sure so everything's working, everything's functional. You can pick things up and you can use them with Link.
Yeah,
And that's enough to get you
it can be
started.
very frustrating when you're working on an application and it doesn't work and you don't know what part of it isn't working. So the fact that you can
Mhm.
pop back to this little test scene and just does this work? It worked the first time when we set everything up. It's still working right now. And if it's not working again, then you'll know, oh, maybe the cable, maybe something's not connected, maybe the headset needs to be restarted. It could be a million other reasons that have nothing to do with your code. So it's really good to
Exactly.
have that kind of like pull back, like what worked before? Oh, I know this should work.
Exactly. But that's why it's a great scene to have because you can go do, and then you can duplicate from that scene. As I said, we're going to start from scratch. So I have a brand new scene. I'm going to delete my main camera from the scene because we don't want 2 of those. And then we're going to go into GroKit Core Grow Blocks. And as I said, these are a big collection of blocks that we have to go and use. I'm not going to go into every single one of these. They are all documented, but we do have specifically in here, we have our meta prepared rig for hand tracking. So if I just add this to the scene, I now have a ready to go meta rig. He's set up for input. He's set up for every single thing that I could ever need. Ready to go. And a quick test while we're in here. Did it work and not break? That's a good question. Give it a second while we're waiting for that. Come on. I see it loading. It's a good sign. There we go. And I have hands. Excellent. Okay. Now that we've qualified that that works, we can now get to actually, building the application, which is going to be great. So we're going to start with the spawner, which is going to be, we want to spawn objects around us specifically. And this right here is set to the average height of, I'd say the average height of people in the US, which is currently, I think it's 449. I don't remember. It's a weird number. I got to figure out. But this is about a good height to set things if you want people to access them. You can, of course, adjust it for your application. So we're going to start with our spawner first. So we're going to create a new object, game object create empty, and I'm going to call this my spawner. And then we're going to start adding components to it. I'll talk about each one. We're going to do a tracked spawner. And I forgot to activate GroKit Core. That is a
Oops.
very important thing to do. So you go to the hub right here, you grab your API key, which I have one set up for this right here. And then authenticate. And there we go. Now you can see everything. That is also the thing. Okay, so we're going to add a tracked spawner. Then we're going to add a base positioner. Then we're going to add a looped timer. So this is a great example to get started because this is using 3 of our components all together, and I'm going to hook them up in such a way that they're going to basically make a nice spawning effect, and then it's good to go. So we're going to start with a tracked spawner. This is a spawner that can track how many objects are in the scene and then detect if any have been deleted. There's also ways you can also set that up. So you see here we have a bunch of settings. We have a nice inspector here. And then you also see there's a positioner here. If something is missing in our inspector, it'll turn red. So example, if I show follow target, for example, it's got a giant angry red mark, and that means that needs to be assigned. So you don't have to guess what needs to be assigned. If it does, it'll be red. Specifically, and we also have tooltips here. If you don't assign it, for example, if there's no positioner, the track spawner is going to spawn itself. So for example, if I just need to make something spawn a specific spot, I don't need what's a positioner. And what a positioner is a positioner is a construct that that allows us to adjust the position of where we want things to work. So a great example of this is this means I want to spawn at this position. I'm going to make a radius of 10 just to show. I'm going to show the gizmo. And the spread type is currently set to none. But for example, I could do it in a sphere. There's a sphere that's about 10 and adjust the exact spawn rate. We can also do a dome. So for example, this is what I'm probably going to use for this one. I want it to be, in this general area and it's down. And we can also
Reachable.
do a
Yeah.
circle. Yeah. And the nice thing is that you can adjust everything, see the exact size, what you're looking for. So this is about a 2-meter dome around me. That's a pretty good height. And then I can see exactly where everything is, which is going to be perfect. One of great tools here, here's a great example. If I want to get this directly centered, I can use local reset and it'll reset this to exactly to the center, which is great. Okay, that looks reachable to me. And then this means that things are going to spawn around this object. So we need to tell the object to actually spawn. So we're going to use a looped timer for that. And a loop timer is a timer that basically will do things for X amount of loops, or in this case, we want infinite loops. And one of the great things too is that we have show or hide ifs. So if you click infinite loops right here, you don't need to worry about extra data to figure out where things are. And the idea is that we're going to, on start, we're going to set this to is active. So the timer is going to start right away. And when the timer completes, every time it completes, it's going to tell the spawner to spawn. And here's another thing we did. All of our functions that are meant to be used all have a little underscore in them. So it's really easy to find them when you're looking through this list. So for example, the base position doesn't have any, track spawner has a few, but specifically we're going to say on this track spawner, we're going to tell it to spawn the object. So every X amount of time, it's going to spawn the object. In this case, to make it extra interesting, I'm going to make a render interval of between 2 and let's say 4 seconds. So that means it's going to randomly pick between 2 and 4, and it's going to go through and keep spawning and spawning and spawning. Now, here's where the track spawner can be fun as well. We can tell how many is the maximum we want to spawn. So I'm going to say, let's say 5 for the moment. And just to test it, I'm going to make a quick little cube. He's going to go over here, and we're just going to see if this works in play mode. So this will spawn basically about 5 cubes and then stop. And we can test this quickly in play mode. And let's see if Link should go any fast. Oh, there we go. Are we working? Oh, we're not in play mode yet. It is thinking.
It does that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see by this that it's so quick to build something
There we go.
fast. You know, look at how like what would you've had to do? This would have taken hours
Mhm.
to write all this. Because also you'd have to think through everything about like, okay, I want to spawn a radius, how big is it going to be? How do I make that stuff spawn in that radius? How do I make sure that the stuff gets destroyed? There's a lot of stuff to think about.
So just to see it spawned them all in a specific spot, but it's set up. And just to test it, I can delete these right here and it should start spawning again because you can only have a specific amount of there. One finally spawned in the right spot. There we go. So if I'm in VR, for example, I can be like, yes, yes, yes. And that one's a no, but we'll deal with that later. So that could mean that, hey, I need to reduce the spawner size. I can do this all live in a specific Unity way. So where are you, base positioner? So we'll do like a 1 and we'll delete all these cubes and spawn them again. And are they all in a good radius?
So,
Yep.
Bryce, Jonathan was asking about
Oh,
the radius. Is it on the edges or is it because it looks like,
well, the radius is going to be, no, it spawns inside, as you can see right here. So this is the edge. Now, of course, as with spawners, it's going to spawn things based upon its center point. So this would spawn at this specific point is what it was where it would be. So if you want to be it smaller, you got to shrink that down a little bit. But no, it doesn't actually do the edges. There is, and keep in mind, this is the base positioner. If you want the position, there's quite a few other positioners. There's a transform one, overlap, and a box glider. And you can also make your own, where you just have to extend our base positioner to do whatever fancy positioning you want to do. The advantage is that
yeah,
anything could just slot into it. Does that
right.
answer your question?
I think what he was trying to get to was because they're sticking out. So the answer was that it's because of the
Ah,
center of the cube is inside the radius
yeah,
of the sphere. So technically it's inside the sphere, even though visually it's not. So he would
yes,
like if you were doing a production thing, you're like, no, it has to be exactly inside this. You would make sure that you set objects up that fit better
correct.
or
I
just
just
make
used
the
a
radius just a little bit bigger too, you know.
Yeah, I just made the cubes, and these cubes are huge. So as you
Yeah,
saw in
yeah.
VR. So thanks. Okay. So my spawner is done. That's it. I now have a working spawner. Um, so we picked 2 for the not that one. We picked 1 for the radius. We're good to go. I can delete this extra cube I made to go test it. But it's ready to go. And now it's time to
So
set up
so
our
basically if you wanted to go into mixed reality and spawn a bunch of kittens into your room,
mhm.
you're already done. Just put the kittens in.
Yep, just have them roll add well, we got to make the kittens
Oh, and in
first.
animation too. That's true. But yeah.
Yeah, I gotta get the kittens ready. So, okay. The next thing we're gonna set up is the triggers. And these are going to be so I'm going to turn off this guy's gizmo to make it so I can see what's going on. And I need to get my gizmos are out of control. There we go. So next, that's a spawner. Now we're gonna do 1 trigger and 1 egg, and then we'll show how to duplicate it after. So we're gonna start with trigger, and we're gonna go to our grow blocks because that's what they're here for. I want an item ID trigger and add it to my scene. Here's a working item ID trigger. So this guy is ready to accept any item ID anytime to make it nice and simple. So we have it set up as you see the outward activators on the top right here. Then we have our trigger, which is a step down, and then we have the visual, and then we have the audio. And we talk about this in our anatomy of grow blocks of we try and keep this as clean as possible so you don't have to go searching. Because one of the really annoying things is to really have to dig down to go and search for something. So anything that needs to happen tends to be on the outward activator. And then you could also have an inward and an outward here. In this case, though, the only thing we do have to edit is our trigger for what our item ID accepts. We do have a base trigger system, so you never have to write on trigger enter ever again. As Robin said, I'm very lazy and I've written it too many times. I never want to write another one. I have solved this with my triggers. Um, Item ID, very specifically here is you have an option of item ID. You can use these set in stone ones, or you can click use strings. And use strings allows you to put anything you want. Our general principle for something like this, if it's not too complicated, is we tend to do everything in all caps, because then there's no questioning of was it capitalized or not? Do you camel case? What do you
Did you
do?
camel case it? Oh my
Did you
gosh.
camel case? Did you
Is
camel
it
case correctly?
leet? Because I want
Yeah.
to be super secure about my
Yeah.
item ID that's internal in an application.
Yeah.
Why you would do that, I don't know. So yeah, keep it simple and argue amongst your team before you even get to this step to figure out your
Correct.
nomenclature and naming conventions.
Very, very important. So what we're going to do is set this to fire. The group ID is, the item ID is one-to-one. The group ID is if you want to have like a group of objects. We're not going to use that for this case. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a GroKit Core score system. And this is in our Grow blocks as well. Score system. And we're going to add our default score system. And this is really, it's a score. Problem solved. I'm going to move it a little further down so I can actually see it. Actually, forward is that way. So that's where it's going to be. You know, to see it. And the score system uses a bunch of objects we'll talk about. The nice thing about it is that it has our main part is our score system. And this is just has an ID, and then everything will reach out and touch that ID very specifically. And we also allow you to save, and you can tell if a score goes negative or not. So we are going to remove and subtract negatives. We also have display score, and this is going to automatically display the score right here to make it nice and easy for us. And we can also do what the start of the string and what the end of the string is, which is kind of neat. So we can say, for example, dragon eggs score, and that's going to be the dragon eggs found. And then it's going to put the number in between these two. So it'll look like, where'd you go? Right there. 0. Okay. The nice thing is this is all handled, so I'm just going to do score for the moment. And then we're good to go for each of those pieces. Yeah. And then I'm going to make this score. Now, a great example to show, this is a great example to show off the buttons and how those are really nice to go and use. So we're going to enter play mode while waiting for that. Is there any other questions I missed in the chat?
Let me take a look. I think we're up to date. Yes, we are good to go.
Excellent. Wasn't long enough.
Well, then we'll make up some other crazy stuff.
Exactly. As you see, these buttons now become live, and you can see, let me get it a little bit easier for everyone to see. There we go. So I can now add to the score and subtract from the score really easily.
This is
And
under the
then,
guise of test early and test often to make sure
yes.
that your
And then
stuff
I
is
was like,
hooked up.
ooh, I forgot a space. So I add a space now, and now it's in the right spot. And I could say dragon score.
I liked your dragon eggs found. That was nice.
Dragon. Okay, let's do dragon
So dragon
eggs.
eggs and then found because I like that spacing
And
it
then
out
we'll
like that.
do that.
Yeah.
And that'll be add 1, 2.
Oh, we need a space.
We need a space. Nice and easy to go test, but I didn't have to go in and actually physically go and touch things. I can test this all right now. And this is a great use of, this is not something I need to test in VR per se, because it's text. I need to make sure it looks
Yeah.
good in VR, but I need to make sure, okay, the strings look good. Then I'm like,
Yeah,
yep, that doesn't look great.
functionality first. Always do functionality passes along the way and save your headset time for when you're like, what does it feel like? Is this gonna work? Like you're actually testing
There we go.
the experience.
There, that looks terrible, but that's what I got for now. Okay. Set tested in play mode. That's good to go. We're going to deal with the score system a little bit later, but he's in here and set up. Now we're going to have the fun part of making the egg, and this is going to be the most complex piece, but it should make the most sense when we get through. All right, so we're going to create a sphere.
And if you're not familiar with Unity, the reason why that just reverted to score is because he was doing that in play mode, so it didn't persist it.
Yes. It is a double-edged sword. It is wonderful to be able to test things and not persist things in play mode, but it also means you have to remember what you did. Okay, so we're
Yeah,
going to make this an
beginning
egg.
problem.
It's going to be really difficult. It's now an egg. Done.
Ta-da! Well, look at that art. Wow, who said
Oh, it's
developers can't do
so
art? Jeez.
beautiful. Wow, look at this
Ooh,
thing.
shiny.
Oh, so amazing. Okay, so we have a whole list of things we need to add to this, and let's go through it one by one. We need to add a inward activator.
Because
We
we
need to
know that
add,
egg needs to do something.
yes, we need to add a GroKit grab object so I can pick it up and move it. We need to add an item ID. We need to
We
add
do better
a
identify it.
base timer event. We need to add a trigger reaction. And we need to add adjust score. And we're also going to add some particle effects to be extra fancy. So we're going to go to grow blocks and we're going to go to bad poof. We need to add a bad poof. And I want to add a poof. Good poof.
Yeah, so Chris is implementing like everything at in one shot. I could see, probably if you're new, you might go through each piece and understand what that's doing for you. So, the grab thing, can I grab it? Sure. And then we know we're going to do stuff internally. We know that it's going to have a timer associated because that's part of the gameplay mechanic of getting you to act quickly and do something with this egg before that time is up. And what happens when the time is up? And what happens when you're successful? So these are all those little parts that we're pulling apart and saying, well, these are just part of these different systems. Let's just configure those different systems and we wire it all up.
Yes. And I was going to go through each one of them for how we're going to set them up. So yeah, the reason I say add all these at once is then you can go through and look at each one, which is kind of nice from a standpoint. And we're going to be using each of these. And in the tutorial specifically, I talk about each piece individually. It's easier to have them all in here in this row because we're going to go in them in the specific order. So we're going to start with the inward activator. And as we said, this is stuff happening to the egg. This is going to be the last thing we set up. The GroKit grab object is set up in such a way that I can pick up and grab it and say, ready to go. There are two things that's also on this list. Because this object moves, it needs a rigid body, which we're going to make kinematic so it doesn't fall to the floor. And we have to set this to a trigger by clicking is trigger. This means one object will trigger another, which is really useful to pick up and grab the object. So we have our grab object. The nice thing about the way our grab object is set up, we have the events if you want enter, exit, and grab. You don't got to worry about those. You just need to add this to any object with a collider and it'll grab, which is really handy. Item ID, we're going to make the fire egg. So we're going to do literally the same thing we did with the trigger. This is going to be a fire. And then next, we're going to talk about our trigger reactions, adjust score, and base timer event. Now, the base timer event is a one-stop timer. So, we forgot one more thing. We'll get there. The base timer is a one-stop thing. So what we want is this egg, it has a timer. And we're going to set it to in about 5 seconds. If you don't get the egg as soon as it spawns, it's going to destroy itself. And we have a thing for that called do destroy. Done. So when that timer's done, we tell this to do destroy. Now, instead of, you might make the mistake of doing it like this and then combining it that way. That's going to be dangerous, and that means you're not using activators correctly. In this case, what we want is we want to use the on and the off event. So the on is going to be a good thing happens. The off is going to be a bad thing happened. So the bad thing happened is going to be our off event. We're going to do destroy, as we said. So we're going to drag this in here. Destroy self. And then we're going to add that we do a bad poof, which is very sad. And this already has what's called an FX spawner, which is going to spawn it. And off we go, which is nice and easy. And then we'll do FX spawner, spawn on self. And then we're going to do the spawn first, then destroy itself. That's one of the great things about Unity events as well, is that you can move them around. So if I want an audio to play first, or I have to worry about things happening all at once, I can just move things up and down. So you spawn self. Now we're literally going to, the nice thing too, is that we actually want basically the exact same thing on the on event. The only difference is that we want, instead of the bad poof, we want the good poof. So you can copy and paste between. You're set up and ready to go. Now, the next,
Can I pop you back to something you said that was really super important? When you were talking about why you'd want to use the on and off event here instead of hooking it up, what is like it would work up there,
oh, of
but
course.
it's not optimal. Part of that just has to do with how are you going to clean up everything at the end? How are you going to make this transportable to other situations very easily? You don't want to have to remember where you hooked it up ever again. You want to be able to
Hmm.
do things like, oh, all the eggs need to go, the game's over, all the eggs need to go away. Okay, I'm just going to do the off event on all the eggs.
Yeah.
Easy.
The other thing what this means is that instead of like, once this is done, everything is going to be specifically, I'm going to be able to collapse everything and know everything it works by an inward activator. And if I'm clever, I will add a note. And
Always
off
leave a
event.
note.
Correct. Yes, that's one of the other reasons why visually I show everything at once, because you're like, wow, that's a lot of components when you only really have to worry about one. This one.
Yeah, when it's all said and done, then it
Hmm.
gets much more simple. This is also like this is part of my survival strategy, right? Is because something is all set up for me. I don't have to go look at all that stuff. I mean, I'll open up things if it's relevant to what I'm
Yeah,
doing,
but you,
like
yeah,
if
exactly.
the sound is affected by like how the timing is and that sort of thing. But I know exactly where to look and I know what I can dig into and how it's configured. It's quite easy.
Yes. So, yeah, and now we're going to start linking things to the inward activator. So when this timer completes, we're going to do off. Inward activator, off event. A trigger reaction, which I'll get into in just a second. A to destroy. Yeah, we're good to go. Yes. So a trigger reaction is when something enters a trigger. This trigger is going to have its own set of events. A trigger reaction says, "Hey, I was correctly triggered. I was correct. I was hit. I was put into the correct trigger that happened. So that's the correct event. And then we also have a wrong event. It's so that when I put this object into this area, what happens to this egg? That way everything's encapsulated. And the nice thing about this is that this can now work with, you don't have to link things specifically to a trigger. So in this trigger action, if I am correct, I'm going to do good. And where are you? You are under inward activator, on event. So trigger reaction on event, we're not going to worry about if you put it into the wrong thing, but you could if you want to. And get this all up. Now, we forgot adjust score because we need to know if you got your score correctly, right? So if I had set these up specifically, that means I would have to add it here and I would have to add it in two separate places. And those would be two separate components, which makes this a lot more complicated. What's the advantage of this is I can be like, hey, I want to just add a just score. So I go back up to the inward and now I'm like, hey, just score. I'm going to add one to the score. And if the egg is destroyed, I'm going to subtract one to the score. Just score, subtract one to score. Now, what's nice about this is that, like, let's say we do playtesting and people really don't like negative concepts. I can just either turn this off or I can remove this entirely. I don't have to then search through and find every single thing I'm looking for in each of these components. I can specifically just go to the inward and outward activator. And we can leave notes of like needs negative score,
Right? Not sure
playtesting.
if the users will like this. Play test it.
Yeah, playtest it.
Absolutely.
And then you
Yeah.
could be like, note, very important to go through. It's also great if this is turned to a prefab, which we'll do, because then you're like, hey, I need to go get this set up and go from there. Okay, so with that in mind, we're going to turn off the spawner for a moment. We're a bit low on time here, but we're going to take this guy and we're going to see if this egg poofs correctly when I pick it up and put it into this trigger right here and then check the score. Are there any questions while we wait for Unity to load?
There are currently takeaways, but I'll say this since we are running low on time, like this is just getting you started. All of these instructions are in that document. and you can follow this step by step. And should you need help, if something's weird or whatever, you can feel free to reach out to us on Discord.
Yep.
Come to me, egg.
I have an egg. Yay.
Eggy.
Okay. So I didn't set the hand. Come on.
Get in there.
Poof.
There we go.
It did it. Excellent.
Let's,
And then another great thing too, with the way activators are set up, which I'm going to disable link because that's why I think it's taking it so long. It's the other thing I like about the plug is just like, I want to deactivate link, just rip the cable out. Is that I can test to see if everything looks correctly just by clicking the buttons on the inward inactivator state. So yes, that was correct. It was a weird place. I can figure out that, hey, my poofs are not in the right spot. So let's get them to 0, 0, 0. They seem to be a bit large. So I'm going to do 0.5, 0.5. And then I can enter play mode again and test it. I don't actually have to physically move the egg. I can just be like, that looks great. And then I can test the bad poof by clicking the off event. So you can test your application really quickly by seeing and see. I got my score -1 by doing that. These buttons help you quite a bit because you're like, yes, it doesn't do. If Robin is testing audio, for example, she might hold on to it and then she can press the buttons if you need to, or use one of the debug components, which is great. Now, here's something to note. The application is basically done. We have our base trigger. This is the fire trigger. And this is the fire egg.
yeah, everything else is duplicating this for additional ones and then creating some kind of interconnectivity of well, if you put the fire in the wrong one, actually that should be the negative score.
Yep.
As opposed to, negative just for not doing it at all.
Mm-hmm.
If you do nothing, you should get nothing. But if you put it in the wrong space, you should get negative.
Who knows? But that's something you
That's
can
up
play
to
with and
you.
find out.
That's up to you.
Exactly.
Exactly, right? That's the beauty of all this is you can get straight to the playtesting part of it and then figure out what's really going to work for your application and just build something cool.
So just for example, these I made the 3 elementals, but here's the fire egg. If I wanted to make the water egg, and so on, you could duplicate them that way. The nice thing also you said with the activators is that like as soon as I click on something, because we picked inward activator first, I know what this does. I don't have to guess or go through anything. It's accessible right away with the inward activator on the top. So yeah,
Yeah,
that is the base
as
tutorial.
you get started off in these kinds of areas too with the inward and outward activators, because that is a little bit of a change in how you do things from a pipeline process. It's really good to practice and review those changes so that you get super consistent. Because the second you have everyone on the team doing the consistent same things with inward and outward activators, everything gets 10 times easier. There's no more guessing. There's no more, where'd you put this? How's this set up? Oh my God, why did you do it this way? You already know. You already have the answer.
Yep. And as we said, the complete video is on the documentation. So you can go through the whole process for all of them. And we even made little particle effects for earth, fire, and water. So you have things to go
There's
work with.
goodies. There's some special
There's
goodies
lots
in
of
there for you.
goodies. All right.
Yes, you can absolutely. You could use this on Quest 2. We only are showing this in the Quest 3 with mixed reality because mixed reality is cool. Also, you could do mixed reality with the Quest 2 as well. It's just going to look more black and white in the background. Not perfectly black and white, but kind of like that. Makes the colors pop really interesting. And you can do it in virtual reality too. It doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. It's just whether or not you have an environment or not.
Yeah. But yeah, if you have any other questions, reach out to Discord. We should be good to go.
Yep, I think we are at time. So Jonathan, did you want to pop back in here for a second and wrap up?
Hi, yeah,
Hi.
that was really great. Followed along and really, I love this. Well, everything that you all do. I just this pattern language of being able to dive in and grapple with kind of these Unity libraries in a way that makes it accessible. Your philosophy of making things that people have to do over and over. The way you've created a usable interface. And well, just the whole ethos is so great. I'm just thank you so much again. This is
You're welcome.
really
Thank
fantastic.
Thanks, Jonathan. That's amazing. And I saw in the chat that you're interested in maybe doing a hackathon. That would be absolutely wonderful.
Yeah,
Let us light the fire on spatial computing and get people enabled with the skills and the tools that they need to be successful.
thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and you guys like just the doing this workshop of really leading people to the water where we can drink and think. This is I love it. Really so much potential here. So I'm a fan and just want to can't thank you enough for
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for having us. And again,
Yeah.
if anyone needs help, Discord, feel free to reach out. We're
yeah.
looking, if you take this to a hackathon, let us know. We want to support you. We want to give you lots of props in the press and all that. So yeah, let's do this thing and let's get the people who know how to do cool stuff, the right tools to do it.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Robin. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, team, for all this. Thank you, Stavros, for hanging in there with us, and the other participants and guests. I think we're recording this. I'm not sure. I know it'll be up on YouTube, at least in some form. If it's all right with you, we might make it available to people to spread the love, spread the word and the magic. So just wanted to thank you all again. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Awesome. All
Thank
right,
you.
Jonathan, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.